Hola, mi amigos. Yo soy St.Christopher. This is The Woodsman, and this is The Writer's Block, a book review show where I tell you if a book is good enough that I would recommend it to a friend, or so bad that I would chop it in half with an axe. Today, on The Writer's Block, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. This is just a book about Buddhism. It probably needs to be 5 pages long and filled with really good quotes, but instead it is stretched out into a 200-page novel. The first chapter is labeled Don't Try, and he cites a Bukowski story. He gives a very base layer description of Bukowski's life and then goes on to have Bukowski's Don't Try quote, something that is quoted on his gravestone, be the cornerstone of this chapter. I think he doesn't get the don't try thing correct, and I get into a lot of circular arguments about this, where someone goes, well, what you need to do is not try. And then the other person will go, if I don't try, I'll never do anything. But that's the thing, you just do it. Okay, well, to do it, you have to try. It's a circular argument that you're arguing just about dictionary definition. What it really means is don't force things. Bukowski has a good quote about taking what he calls a beer shit, where he's hungover, he's drank too much, he goes to the toilet, and he just unloads. It all comes out of him. That's what don't try means. It means don't force anything. Wait till the moment is right and let it all flow out of you. And it should come easily. Chapter 2, to echo my point, he starts off with a story about the Buddha. Chapter 3, I think, is the best chapter so far. You should probably start the book with chapter 3, because for 2 chapters, I've been listening to someone who is apparently a very famous blogger. I don't know who he is. And chapter 3 grounds you with a story from his childhood. I think that goes to the beginning, because now I know who I'm being in a conversation with. And then we come to chapter 4. Chapter 4. He starts off chapter 4 with a story about a Japanese soldier. It's a true story. This Japanese soldier fights 30 years after World War II has ended in the Philippines. And the Japanese government needs to enlist his old commanding officer, who is retired and I think has become a librarian or something. And they send him to the Philippines so he can give the order to this soldier to stand down, because he's just killing innocent villagers because he still thinks that the war is going on. At the end of telling this story, he says that this soldier goes back to Japan, he gains a bit of fame, but he is so distraught with what Japan has come with Western virtues that he leaves for Brazil in 1980 and he never returns. The problem is, he did return. He comes back to Japan and makes schools. And he also dies in Tokyo. You might be thinking, well, maybe it's Tokyo, Brazil. No, it's Tokyo, Japan. And this is where I hit the brakes on this novel. I could slog through the slightly comedic over-explanations of Buddhism that he gives. But when he gets a major fact wrong, every other single time he starts a story, I'm not thinking about the story. I'm thinking, am I going to go back and have to fact check this and find out he's just making stuff up? Chapter 5, he has a very good quote, which is why I stopped reading the book. It basically talks about taking charge and taking responsibility for your own life. And he says, and don't quote me on this, but he says, it's not my fault that I've written this book and you hate it. It's your fault because you're continuing to read the book. Well, I've stopped reading the book. I've taken control of my life. Thank you, Mark. But this book does not make it off the block.